the Indian Trust Act. Why there is a written law? What do you think? The reason is because it involves property. I trust you, you trust me, but there is no involvement of property. But when the property is involved in trust, of course, there has to be a law. Trust is, in very simple sense, very common sense. We all know what is trust, and here is also the same trust. And you have also read trust in some other law. In which law? Yes,
Transfer
please.
of property.
Huh?
Transfer of
Transfer,
property.
transfer of property. And I don't think there is a trust in transfer of property. Anyway,
नहीं
any other
मतलब
law?
जनरली पढ़ा था, जूरिस्प्रूडेंस में भी पढ़ा था ऐसे तो.
Okay. Any other law? Very common law, very famous law. You are not answering this question because you have uh, a conception, or you have in your mind, your mind is preoccupied by the thing. What is that thing? That 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 the trust is a matter of civil law. That's why you are not reaching there, which I want from you. Now tell me, which law?
तो अलग ट्रस्ट है फिर सर वो आईपीसी में,
Yes,
क्रिमिनल ब्रीच ऑफ
IPC.
ट्रस्ट.
Breach of trust. So how can you say that
वही
that is
ऐसा
a different trust?
ये ट्रस्ट प्रॉपर्टी के रिगार्डिंग है, तो मुझे लगा वो ट्रस्ट लाइक नहीं होता वो. हाँ, वो होता वैसे तो हाँ है सर, क्योंकि वो उसमें ही प्रॉपर्टी के बारे में ही बात करता है कि डिसऑन
हम्म,
आया नहीं सर वो दिमाग में पहले.
कोई बात नहीं, अभी तो आ गया. क्लास इसीलिए होती है. क्या है वो? ब्रीच ऑफ
था
ट्रस्ट.
ना कि जो भी प्रॉपर्टी अगर इंटरेस्ट इंटरेस्ट की हो अगर किसी को, और वो डिसऑनेस्ट यूज कर ले अपने लिए, शायद 405 सेक्शन है आईपीसी का,
यस,
क्रिमिनल ब्रीच
405.
ऑफ ट्रस्ट.
Exactly. I am of the view that that trust is also the same, which we are talking about today. The trust which is given in section 405 of IPC. What is section 405? That somebody entrust some property. Some property is entrusted to any person, and that person who the property was entrusted has misused that property, That means he has committed the breach of trust. भरोसे का कत्ल कर दिया उसने. That is also the same trust. Now, let us come to our topic. It is for the general understanding what the trust actually is. Trust is simply a confidence. It is a confidence reposed by one person into some other person. One person reposes the confidence in some person. That is the trust. Our today's topic is what is the trust and how the trust is created. When you will go through the textbook, you will find so many definitions of the trust. But I am giving you two definitions which are very near to our definition. Our definition means the definition given under section 3 of the Trust Act. The first definition is of Lindley, Lindley, Justice Lindley. He says that a trust is really nothing except a confidence. Trust is nothing except a confidence reposed by one person in another and enforceable in a court of law. And at that time, he actually said in the court of equity. According to him, a trust is really nothing except a confidence reposed by one person in another, and that confidence enforceable in a court of equity. The second definition, which is given by Burrell, Burell, he says that a trust is a confidence reposed in and accepted by some person or persons. He says the confidence reposed in and that confidence must be accepted by some person or more than person, many persons. These two definitions are very near, very close to our definition or the definition given under section 3 of Indian Trust Act 1882. Now, exactly come to the section 3. What does section 3 say? Section 3 defines the trust that the trust is as an obligation. It is an obligation annexed to the ownership. It is an obligation annexed to the ownership of property. It is an obligation which is annexed to the ownership of the property and arising out of a confidence reposed in and accepted out of a confidence accepted by the owner. or declared and accepted by him for the benefit of another. Another means beneficiary. Okay. It is an obligation which is annexed to the property, and by that property, that confidence is reposed by honor of the property in some other person, and that confidence is accepted by the another person, or for whose benefit the confidence was reposed in the property. It is just who is the trustee? Trustee is a bare owner of the property. In the trust matter, there are two owners: the actual owner, and the trustee also becomes the owner after the creation of the trust. So trust is nothing but it is a confidence reposed by one person. By one person means the owner of the property in some other person. Other person means the trustee. Okay, for the benefit of the third person. Third person means beneficiary. Okay, and by virtue of act, it is enforceable in the court of law. This trust act defines the duties of the trustee and the liabilities of the trustee, duties of the author of the trust, liabilities and duties of the beneficiary, etc., etc. Who creates the trust? He is the author of the trust. To whom, in whom the trust is created, that is the trustee. For whose benefit the trust is created, that is the beneficiary. Of which property the trust is created, that is the trust property or the subject matter. And the trust is, in many cases, maximum mainly is created by an instrument that is known as the instrument of trust. Okay, it is about the definition of the trust. Any question? Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now come to the section 4. The creation of the trust. Section 4 and section 6. How the trust is created. But before the creation of the trust, what are the essentials? Because the case is not like this, the trust can be created for anything, for any property, for any person, no. What are the restrictions? Those restrictions have been provided under section 4. It will always be created for the lawful purposes. What are the lawful purposes? And it is a good technique to remember the lawful purposes of the trust. You must recall, you have read, in which law you have read the lawful purposes.
Contract.
Contract, exactly. Section 23. A contract can be created only for lawful objects, lawful consideration. The same thing, same things are here under section 4 of Trust Act. What does it say? It says that a trust may be created for any lawful purpose, and the purpose of a trust is lawful unless all the purposes of the trust is lawful unless it is number one forbidden by law. The same thing is in section 23 if it is forbidden by law. Number two is of such a nature that if permitted it would defeat the provision of any law. Second restriction is, do you understand the difference between the two? Lawful purpose forbidden by law and is of such a nature that if it is permitted it would defeat the provision of law. Lawful purposes means, for example, if there is you may find so many illustrations in section 23 like this. If there are certain person, 2-3 person, they agree, they make an agreement to get some property by fraud, or they suppose A, B, C agree to commit a robbery, and whatever is whatever will be got by that robbery will be received by that robbery, that will be equally distributed among the 3 persons. What are all these things? These things are, they are unlawful purposes, because the robbery is unlawful, fraud is unlawful. But in second category, which says that is of such a nature that if permitted, it would defeat the provision of any law. That means it is directly not unlawful. But if it is allowed to happen, it will ultimately defeat the provision of law. For example, suppose if there is a property, somebody's property, and that property, that person has areas of the government, revenue areas of the government, and that property of that person, property of A, has to be sold for the realization of the government revenue. Okay. When this thing came to the knowledge of the A, what did A do? He makes an agreement with B, other person, and there is an agreement between A and B, and B was prepared to buy that property from the government, and the amount of price and amount of that property will be given by A. And after some time, it will be given back to A. apparently there is nothing illegal in this. If B is buying the property, if A, B are making certain agreement, or B ultimately buys that property, there is nothing illegal, nothing unlawful, apparently. But if it is allowed, ultimately it will defeat the provision of law. What is the purpose of law? The purpose of the law is to realize the revenue from A. This is the second, and the third is if it is a fraudulent, if any trust is created for any fraudulent thing, its purpose is unlawful. That means the trust cannot be created. And fourth one is if it involves or implies injury to the person or property of another. The trust is like this. Ultimately, the creation of the trust is going to harm somebody else or somebody else's property. In that case, the trust is illegal, unlawful. The purpose of the trust is unlawful. And the last category is if the court regards it as immoral or opposed to the public policy. And you will find the language of the section 23 of Indian Contract Act same. If you remember, if you memorize the one section, you will memorize two sections instead of one. Section 23 of Indian Contract Act and section 4 of Indian Trust Act 1882. Purpose should be, for the creation of the trust, the purpose should be lawful. For any unlawful purpose, a trust cannot be created. Now, how it is created? When it is established that the purpose is lawful, thereafter the trust can be created. How it is created? It is given in section 6. By the same title, the creation of trust. What does section 6 say? It says that a trust is created when the author of the trust means who wants to create the trust, indicates with reasonable certainty by any words or acts, it may be oral or by an act, an intention on his part to create thereby a trust. Very simple thing. There must be an intention to create the trust. If there is no intention, if something occurs without intention, a trust cannot be created. The intention is essential. An intention on his part to create a trust. Second thing, the purpose of the trust. It must be clear what is the purpose of trust, intention and the purpose. And third is beneficiary. It must be specified, must be clear that who is or are beneficiary of this trust. It cannot be like this. Trust may be created for anybody. It may be created for the group or class, but that group and class must be specified. And the fourth is the trust property there must be the property must be specified. It cannot be like this, the my sum property. Author of the trust cannot say like this, my sum property. It must be definite. Definite property. What are the essentials for the creation of the trust? There must be an intention, there must be a purpose, there must be a beneficiary, and the trust property must be, there must be a trust property, a specific trust property. If any one of these things is lacking, that means a trust cannot be created. These are the essentials for the creation of a trust. We may see some illustration provided in section 6. For example, illustration A, it says that A bequeaths certain property to B, having the fullest confidence that he will dispose of it for the benefit of C. This created trust so far as regards A and C. Now let's see. A bequeaths certain property. The word certain has been used. That means the property is specified. Having the fullest confidence that he will dispose of it for the benefit of C. That means the beneficiary C is clear. Obviously, it creates a trust. But at the same time, see another illustration. It says A bequeaths certain property to B, requesting him to distribute it among such members of C, such members of C's family as B should think most deserving. Any member who B thinks that he is most deserving. He creates a trust, the B is the trustee, and ask him to distribute and give this property to a member of a family whom you think that he is most deserving. One. That means this does not create a trust. It is given your illustration. This does not create a trust. Why? For the beneficiaries are not indicated with reasonable certainty. Beneficiaries are not indicated with reasonable certainty who actually beneficiary is. What are the essentials of the trust? The very first thing, that how the trust can be created. For that, the first thing is that the trust can always be created for a lawful purpose. What are the lawful purpose? it is clear, it is given in section 4. It should not be forbidden by law, it should not defeat the provision of the law, it should not be opposed to moral and public policy. Okay. If it qualify the section 4, in that case, a trust can be created. And what is essential? What are essentials for the creation of the trust? That there must be a author of the trust, truster, there must be a trustee, there must be a definite beneficiary, there must be a property, and there must be a definite purpose, intention, and thereafter the purpose, the exact purpose for what the trust is being created. Anything up to here? Section 3, Section 4 and 6. Please note down all these sections.